It's sundown in Cybertown, which means it's time for another episode of Destroy All Clickbait with all the smoothest sounds of internet drivel and corporate flop sweat. If you're a millennial, take a break from killing everything and join us on a dark ride through the haunted wastelands of the web. With me, as always, are staunch companions, Ing and Abby.
Hello.
Hi.
So, we've got, as we were just saying, a couple of large developments in internet culture this week. It's actually, I think, might make sense to do our. I still can't believe this article. To do our Waluigi update right away. Ing has found a real gem for us. Ing, you want to?
The Waluigi update, the segment that people are asking, why are you doing this?
Because we can.
The segment that we said would be a segment as a joke, and then found out there apparently is indeed enough material bi-weekly to make it a thing.
And even if there wasn't, there's still old material that was made years ago that we could still comment on, so yay.
Well, you've seen the tweet about the philosophical ramifications of Waluigi, right?
Yeah.
Someone was
yeah,
thinking,
of course.
Because I can't remember the terminology used, but he's Luigi is the reflection of Mario.
Hold on, let me find it.
It basically, it's like he's the reflection of a reflection,
right.
And therefore he's nothing.
Yeah. Luigi is the reflection. Mario is the opposite.
Here it is.
Mario's the inversion.
I can actually put it right here.
Okay.
Let me just post it, because actually it might even be worth saving the other one for later and making this one, which is the
main one.
Well,
the main one for the title of this article is Critical Perspectives on Waluigi.
On the Waluigi. No, I think we should save Critical Perspectives on Waluigi for next week, because the one you linked to has relevance to of the moment, and it's not going to be as relevant in a couple weeks. So we should talk about the one the main one.
Well, I will pocket this scholarly link on Waluigi for later.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's good though. Yeah. We'll do that next week.
It's a classic.
But,
that'll be our Waluigi update from the archives.
Indeed.
Well, there's deep critical examination never goes sour.
So,
Fresh.
should I go into this one?
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
yes.
Today's one comes from CNET.com. An essay titled "Big Dick Energy, Thy Name is Waluigi" by Daniel Von Boom.
So it's completely made up then. Daniel Von Boom.
Probably.
But what I like about this article, other than the fact that it is tying the phrase "big dick energy" to Waluigi, which will never not be funny, is that it does actually explain to me sort of the question I had about where the phrase "big dick energy," or abbreviated in the article BDE, came from.
Yeah.
And it also, I never actually thought that the explanation, well, where does the term "big dick energy" come from, can be answered with the sentence, "It started following the tragic death of Anthony Bourdain."
Well, at least he's, somebody who keeps giving.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. And the tweet is, we're talking about how Anthony Bourdain had big dick energy, which is what he would have wanted. And I can't say that's not the case, let's be fair. So...
Yeah, well, I think what people...
The internet for the past day or two has been obsessed with big dick energy. What is it? Who has it? Who doesn't have it?
Yeah.
Big dick energy isn't gender specific. It's not a literal description, but a vibe.
Right.
Yep.
Well,
Think of Rihanna. She is universally hailed as having big dick energy.
Why?
Star Wars icon Carrie Fisher's big dick energy was off the charts.
Yes. Well,
oh god.
The argument, as I understand it, in the original, the original woman who tweeted it, was that it was based on Anthony Bourdain. It was because she said he seemed like he had a big dick, regardless of whether he actually did or not. He just seemed like he did. So he had big dick energy. That's the meaning of the term. Just to be very specific, apparently.
So it's origin of it. Of course, since then, it, like the majestic monarch butterfly, has emerged from its chrysalis, wings glistening in the morning dew and taking flight.
Oh, God.
It sure has. And it's
BBC has released an article titled, "What is Big Dick Energy and Who Really Has It?"
Uh-huh.
From BBC News, which will never not be funny to me.
Oh my god. I mean, I suppose they have to get them clicks somehow.
Looks evil, but is apparently an angel and loves his girl publicly.
That's not describing
say?
Waluigi, but it very well could be.
Oh, yeah, no, sorry, that's about Pete Davidson.
Oh.
Sorry,
okay.
This is in the article. So they're tracing it from somehow Ariana Grande made it blow up. We're talking about her fiancé. But then, okay, so how do they tie it to Waluigi? Is my question.
Well, basically, if anyone has it, it's got to be him, just because of how loved he is, because that's how it works, apparently.
Well,
apparently.
There was actually a thing, I think our friend on Twitter, Spearhawk, was talking about that was actually the attractiveness of the grotesque, which was specifically talking about that the sort of almost attractive way a character that is like physically unattractive or ugly, but unashamedly so, has there. And he talked actually Wario was used as one of the examples, since Wario is like unashamedly Wario.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that almost swings around into being admirable or even attractive in if not necessarily sexually, then charismatically, in the fact that it is just somebody who has so much confidence and no fucks given about how others perceive them that it winds up being a positive trait. Other video game characters about this mentioned were Roadhog from Overwatch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure that we can, think of a few for that, but I think actually big dick energy does wind up, if not actually being synonymous with, Venn diagram with it very well.
Yeah, I'd say that there's definitely a certain amount of overlap that happens there.
Yeah.
Well, it's...
Because what Carrie Fisher and Rihanna definitely have in common is just not giving any fucks.
Yeah.
So yeah. It's a form of confidence. And the hilarious thing is, we're another few days away from this being a very serious descriptor of personality. Somehow, it went from a complete joke to being... people seriously considering...
Soaring high in the sky and its migration to its birthing place of New Mexico.
Yes.
I mean, I eventually started to see small dick energy jokes, so there's also that.
Yeah. Adequate dick energy, yes.
Yeah. No, not even adequate, just small dick energy.
What?
So.
Yes. Well, and that is a good... That seems like it seems like a positive thing, because it's a way of saying, talking about someone without necessarily dealing with their actual attributes and shaming someone for not having, sufficient attributes. It just says, it doesn't matter what the actual size of your genitals are, it's completely to do with your confidence level. And obviously we're talking about people who aren't even, who don't even have a dick in the first place. How are we talking about this? Because
it's good to know.
We're having a serious conversation about this all of a sudden. Semi-serious.
I think I've had weirder conversations about things seriously.
God, remember that road trip where we went up talking about the hypothetical meat world?
I think so.
World.
Oh, wait, yeah. Wait, because it was off of the Tin Man, the original Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz, right?
So the details came up, so it was like almost like a Waluigi Wario inversion there. If ours is a place where like people where like if we are the non-meat universe, then there is an equivalent one that is the meat universe, where a majority of things are meat.
But I mean,
and non-meat is eaten.
Oh gosh.
So,
oh jeez.
But we are meat, though. So how are we not meat universe?
Yeah, this is why this was a very long car trip, and this wound up being a very long discussion.
I don't think I was a part of this particular conversation, but I do remember the whole thing about the Meat Man, because you had the Tin Man.
If I remember correctly, that conversation segued into discussing the nuances of B-movie.
The B-movie.
Yeah, the B-movie,
the Jerry Seinfeld animated classic from whatever year
the Jerry Seinfeld B, like flirting with a woman that could easily just casually accidentally crush him. Big dick energy.
That is the ultimate big dick energy if you're a B and you're going out with a woman 100 times your size, basically.
Yeah.
That is a movie I...
Apparently, and I've only recently learned about this, the true ending of that movie was supposed to be the B character going off into space.
What?
He becomes an astronaut and he goes off into space.
Okay. I mean, having never seen the movie, I can't say if that's an illogical ending to it.
Yeah,
but
no, it is.
Seems arbitrary.
In a movie that is a series of illogical things happening, that very much actually does not follow any other part of the movie. I can confirm that.
Yeah, apparently part of the premise was to take every single B as in the letter B movie trope or trait and try to shove them all into one movie, and obviously you can't quite do that.
No.
So that's where the premise originally started, but then they remembered, oh wait, this has to be for kids, but then they put a trial in the movie because why?
Okay. Well,
so yeah, it was a movie that should not have happened, and apparently it happened because Jerry Seinfeld once made a really bad joke to Steven Spielberg, and Steven Spielberg probably chuckled to himself far too much over it and decided to make a movie with Jerry Seinfeld.
The horrors that have been unleashed because Steven Spielberg was amused. Steven Spielberg, he gave
That's how we got Indiana Jones 4.
Well, that's how we got... It's how we got Colin Trevorrow, apparently. It was basically Steven Spielberg, met him once and thought he was cool. Well, I guess he liked his first movie that he made, which was Safety Not Guaranteed. Which is not a good movie, by the way. I'm going on record for that right now. Some people think it's okay. I do not like that movie. And yet, because of it, that and meeting Spielberg and having big dick energy to Steven Spielberg... Apparently, that was what got him a career directing frickin' Jurassic Park and almost a Star Wars and Jurassic World.
Book of Henry. How can we forget his magna opus?
How can we? Well, I wish you would tell me if you figure it out, because we all want. Although, again, that's as with the B movie. You kind of go, I almost want to see that.
Here's the thing: Book of Henry is like Collateral Beauty is an absolute disaster. But I'm kind of glad it exists for the unintentional, just what it unintentionally has enriched the culture and life via existing.
Oh God!
Just it's effectively like you know how you put a mirror in a parakeet's cage? So that it occasionally gets confused by there being another parakeet and pecks it, and this keeps it from being bored and enriches its mind. I feel that movies that fail so much like Book of Henry and Collateral Beauty are like that for the culture as a whole, because it's just something that we can look at and just, almost collectively come together trying to solve this puzzle of how did this happen. It's something that brings, like, the culture collectively together to untangle a Gordian knot to figure out
God.
What is this? Why is this? How is this?
For what is this? But
Yeah. Well, I've only seen the Legendary trailer, which of course famously changes tones and genres every 30 seconds when you're watching the trailer. And,
no, that's the movie.
Apparently the movie lives up to that, which is pretty impressive. But it should be said, also another benefit of that movie is that it spared us Colin Trevorrow on Star Wars Episode 9.
Really?
Well, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm guessing, but between seeing the movie and it bombing terribly, that seems to have been what got him booted.
No,
off
I
of
can
the-
actually confirm that this is a movie that I could see somebody in charge of Star Wars seeing and,
Yep.
like, immediately making a panicked call.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Okay.
So it's almost,
That's
Shove it
interesting.
down! Shove it all down!
hit the red button. Well, maybe that's a good indication why you should not hire people for major movies because they made one indie. And Steven Spielberg liked them a bit. And I mean,
are
it's
we
hard to
perhaps-
argue with Steven Spielberg's instincts, obviously,
Are we
over
perhaps-
the years.
Well, his instincts also gave us Michael Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, he's maybe lost it a little over the years.
They
But-
can't all be...
Maybe he shouldn't be getting other people to make movies is really the thing.
But
How-
are we
sorry, you said-
proposing... Wait, Adam. Are we proposing that this is actually perhaps a dark side of the big dick energy?
the inverted dick energy,
Or
as it were.
or not even, like, the invert at a counter, like this is the wah big dick energy. Or
Oh jeez.
but simply that this is like the
Big
yin
wah
to
dick
the yang, or the yin to the yang there, or the positive to the negative, that with, the benefits that possibly big dick energy could have, such as getting people into clubs that they are not welcome in, or getting...
Yeah.
Or
No,
or getting people out of traffic tickets, or Rihanna. It also gives us, say, Michael Bay movies, or I can't remember his name, but the guy who wants to be Quentin Tarantino, who did Hostel and Cabin Fever, his undying confidence.
Eli Roth.
Yeah, or it gives us Eli Roth's undying confidence that he's made movies.
Well, in that case,
There is inevitably a negative that goes with the positive.
yes,
Much
well, in that case,
like
it's all
how
still-
in the ancient Greeks believed that the physician was the master of both disease and cure, poison and wellness.
Well, okay, so that's that's the, as you say, the dark side of the big dick energy, but it works well for the people the person who's employing
The
it,
taint of the
regardless
big
whether
dick
that-
energy, if you will.
Yes, regardless of whether he means it well or poorly for those around him. The inverted big dick energy, the big wah dick energy, as you might say, is that of the people around them who make bad decisions and listen to the people with big dick energy and can't detect the badness of these people. That's my postulation right there.
So
Did I
are we postulating perhaps a BDR, or bad dick resonance phenomena, where the big dick energy resonates off of other people and keeps them from putting a stop to things that should be harmful?
Yes. Well, I think it's only natural that the existence of one implies the existence of the other, Ing. I think the formula for that would be fairly clearly expressed as
Oh, no.
BDE equals negative BDR, as it were. And the two have a natural attraction, like the neuron, like the electron and the positron. They are drawn together, and the one cancels out the other. Right?
Yeah, I was wondering if we were gonna have that it was like a gravitational field, so that it would be like, BDE is equal to BDR, or BDR is equal to BDE over distance squared.
All right,
oh my god.
All right, get the whiteboard out. So I'm getting out a whiteboard, and I'm flipping it over. You gotta have sigma in there, because all complicated equations have a sigma in there somewhere. We'll figure it out.
If I
Okay,
remember correctly, what does sigma represent? A repeating function? Sorry. Hi, welcome
I don't know enough math or science to know any of this, unfortunately.
I don't either.
Pitch for a sequel to Beautiful Mind, a big dick?
I think so. I think you're right.
A beautiful dick, yes.
A beautiful dick.
And of course, good dick hunting, where he's a dick.
I picked the wrong time to take a sip of coffee! Well, I think I'm going to nominate that as the episode title, Big Dick Hunting.
Big
Dick hunting, yeah. People will be very confused with that. Oh, gosh.
Oh, that's cleared up my skin and watered my crops. Well done.
Well, yes, watering your crops may be another form of big dick energy, by the way. Anyway, so I'm doing pretty well for a guy who's on a whole ton of medication right now.
Yeah,
anyway.
You can't tell. The summary of the article is that Waluigi's not the only Nintendo character with big dick energy. Yoshi has big dick energy. Bowser, possible big dick energy. Samus's big dick energy is through the roof. But if the internet is going to give big dick energy a face, I for one cast my vote for Waluigi.
I mean, he does have that victory pose in what I think it's in the soccer game, where he
does crotch chops.
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah. Well, I can't help but thinking of your explanation for Waluigi's origin over the years, how he had been stretched on a rack by Wario. So logically, if he was stretched on a rack to become bigger, that would also affect his dick, right? His dick has also been stretched.
Well, that would mean that there would actually be, like, you would have 5 tethers, one for each limb and one for the dick.
Yes, of course. And the neck. It was an extensive process, apparently.
Oh, okay, yes.
Because,
rack is perhaps a simplistic term for this very sophisticated piece of Swedish ergonomic equipment.
Yes. Exactly. Oh, dear.
And this is... yes, Waluigi. Waluigi, at this point, I'm starting to suspect, is kind of like Worm Tongue to Wario's Saruman.
That's not a bad explanation.
He kind of is, follows along his wake, but someday he will stab him in the back and take his revenge for all the misery that Wario has visited.
Although they're two evil dudes who found each other and get along famously.
You're right, that does get
By established by last week, it is a viable interpretation to read them as a couple.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Yes, well, it could be an unhealthy relationship, of course.
Yes,
but you're right. It doesn't.
That's always true.
Yeah.
After all, Wa is love. Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No more.
What is wrong with all of us? Anyway. What? Anyway. Well, there you go. So Waluigi has... the funny thing about this article is it doesn't actually give a very good explanation for why Waluigi has big dick energy.
Well, it pretty much makes the argument of just basically, look at Waluigi.
Yeah.
I mean,
he exists and people love him.
Yeah, people
we don't
love
know
him
why,
despite the
but
fact
people
that
love him.
No reason to.
Yeah.
Yeah. There really isn't.
Yeah. Well, like this show, they're attracting the heat, the Waluigi heat, in the form of clickbait by claiming he has big dick energy and just putting it out there with no real explanation. But hey, it is true that Waluigi has developed a fan base based on basically nothing. So is that the fictional character version of Big Dick Energy when you're a non-entity and somehow that makes you powerful and famous?
Yeah.
That would mean the Kardashians have very big dick energy then.
Yeah, yes, I would agree. I think that is actually true. They had very little, although they had wealth, and they did get, as we know, fame from their dad being involved with the O.J. Simpson trial. So
correct.
They had a stepping stone, but it is
also,
true that...
I need everyone to check because I forgot about it, but then I put it, so I had to clarify and then put up this bit of thing that can easily be... And anyway, here's the next article to transition.
Okay. The size...
Which we go from the figurative big dick energy to literal Nintendo dick energy and measurements with this article by pedestrian.tv. We now know the size of Luigi's chongus thanks to the internet and algebra.
Yeah. Yeah. And, yeah.
Oh, this bit. I do, in fact, remember.
Yeah, this is several months old at this point,
yes.
But yeah, people have way too much time.
Yes. This is based on the article.
There's a picture of Luigi where people have taken the bulge in the penis and attempted to then calculate its ratio to the tennis racket being held, and going by the normal dimensions of tennis rackets to calculate Luigi's penis size.
Yes. Because it should be noted, this is also the first, I believe, tennis game where they're not in their overalls, and that also freaked people out. So...
Well, it is a tennis outfit, so there you go.
Apparently the math declares that it is about 3.7 inches flaccid.
Uh-huh.
There you go.
And that's based on the size of an average tennis racket, which I think is may not apply in this case because Luigi is a cartoon character with are we sure about the actual sizes of Mario and Luigi? Are they human sized? Are they like 2 feet tall? Are they 8 foot tall
I
monsters?
do know that Mario has an official height. Let me check to see what Luigi's official height is.
We've established this. That's good. Of course we have.
Yes. Hold on. All right. With Mario accurately being 5'1", this would make Luigi about 5'5".
Fair enough. So they are fairly small. So, but his tennis racket in his world might not be the size of an average tennis racket, is all I'm saying.
It seems to be properly proportioned for a standard tennis racket for an adult man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Game Theory did actually do an entire goddamn video about this. So, if y'all want to really know,
guys,
he did the math.
I'm going to be honest, part of why I'm focusing on it, there is very few video game news that is this amusing and not just depressing.
This is true. This is very,
very true. Do you have any idea how deep I had to dig to find, video game news minus racism?
or
minus racism,
anti-feminism,
well,
bigotry.
Well, maybe that's the beauty of Waluigi, is the fact that news about him is always positive and uplifting, and it will never be about how Waluigi has joined a white supremacist cult and voted for Trump. It will always be about Waluigi's bizarre existence, which, no matter how creepy and weird, will not be racist or misogynist. So that's my theory on the appeal of Waluigi. So, there you go.
I can buy that.
He appeals to all.
He appeals to all with his sheer weirdness but harmlessness. So, and apparently Luigi as well. Luigi as well, because there's an article about the size of Luigi's chongus. And why? I've literally never heard that phrase before, chongus. So I don't know if they're just making that up.
Well, here's the thing. Even if they are euphemisms for penis or as such, that it's immediately recognizable.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
Like, there's somehow a certain somatic, or not somatic, a verbal, like, grammar or shape to phallic imagery to where it is recognizable as such, even if never used previously. It's sort of a corollary to the infinite breast euphemism phenomena or theory.
Yes. But,
which, for those who don't know, specifies that literally any noun can be used as a euphemism for breasts. Simply by a tone of language. The sentence, would you check out the blank on her, for example, if said in an appropriately creepy way, for any value of blank, or x in this equation, where x equals any noun in the English dictionary or vocabulary, its meaning will always mean breasts.
Right. Check out the wainscoting on her.
Check out the refrigerators on her.
Oh, jeez.
Check
out the blue ribbon Yorkshire Terriers on that one.
Oh my god.
Check out the cryptic crossword puzzles on her. I don't know. I don't know if that works.
She has a fine set of Q-tips.
Yeah, the Q-tips. Yeah. Well, it reminds me of the Norm Macdonald routine where he talks about how, like, the innuendo spouting hosts from, like, studs in the late 90s or whatever, and he'd talk about, if you wanted to go out with a popsicle, if I was a popsicle, what would you do to me? And he'd say, well, I'd grab hold of your sticks, if you know what I mean, and then I'd take off your wrapper, if you know what I mean, and then I'd press you against the counter till you break, if you know what I mean, and then I'd put half of you in the fridge for later, if you know what I mean. Just kept going. And it makes less and less sense as innuendo as it goes on.
Anyway. So, who else remembers the show Whose Line Is It Anyway?
I think we all do.
Yeah.
Yes.
One of my favorite games for that, I think, literally was called If You Know What I Mean. Where the whole premise...
It didn't get as much play compared to some other games, but yeah.
But the whole premise of it was to give a scene and make things sound dirty, despite them not actually being.
And, like, completely not being dirty. It was great.
And then, of course, going all the way back to Seinfeld, where Jerry's attempt at dirty talking was, are those the panties your mother laid out for you?
Oh!
Jeez.
Which made no sense and just confused everyone.
Oh, I think that made me sterile.
Make you sterile? What?
So should we transition from Waluigi, something everyone can love, to something that no one can love and everyone has united in hate against?
Yep.
Alright. This one comes to us from the San Diego Union Tribune, which, first of all, you pick one name and stick to it. You're trying too hard. Written by the illustrious contact reporter Chris Reed, which, again, pick one name and stick to it. Those are two first names.
And also, what is a contact reporter? Like,
I think that means like a reporter, but while they're writing it, they have to run down a football field, and editors are trying to tackle them, or that they have to do it on ice skates, and an entire NFL team is after them.
Yeah.
Trying to
Actually, I think
them
that's
into
just a
the
link
board.
if you want to contact him.
Yeah.
Well, okay, if we want to not be fun about it.
I wonder how much hate mail he's gotten for this one article.
If we want to ignore my very funny imagery of, like, somebody trying desperately to write up their think piece clickbait on an old BlackBerry as an entire New Zealand rugby team chases them with cudgels, then fine, we can go by what is actually in reality.
Okay.
Who writes the article in opinion/commentary? Let's be honest, America, dogs are parasites, not man's best friend.
Mm-hmm.
Which then has a picture of a beagle, which the caption reads, "A beagle puppy looking toward a photographer. No, you don't know what he's thinking."
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, is it an attempt to, de-emotionalize it as much as possible, I guess, to make his point, but to de-anthropomorphize it as much as possible?
Yeah, but the problem is that we anthropomorphize everything, so it doesn't matter.
Well, his basic argument
everything.
is that dogs don't actually like you, they just want food, which... So, I don't know if anyone knows this, but this is actually my educational background.
Yes, it is.
That and clowns.
So, yeah.
Well, no, clowns is just a hobby.
No, clowns is just a thing that I don't know how I know, and, like, my question, and, like, I basically question, it's like, look, I didn't have to do deep digging to somehow absorb this information. I seriously don't know how no one else knows this.
The knowledge of clowns just wafts towards you on the breeze in the summer day. Anyway, but yes, yeah, you're a biologist.
Yeah, we'll go with that. By training,
He knows. Yeah.
So, to get some background about basically what this is, so you had, like, for a lot of the natural philosophy, like, from Aristotle forward, there was, like, an inherent anthrocentric view of it. And you had, like, a lot of anthrocentric descriptions of animal behavior and that sort of thing. And then, basically, at around the Enlightenment and going on to, like, Victorian era, there was a movement to kind of, remove yourself from that and be more clinical and detached in discussing this. Which is fine, which, on its host is fine, but that, like, gives a lot of idea for, like, a lot of descriptions of things, and that also ties into a lot to, like, ethnography, or, like, a whole bunch of stuff that's actually, science really doesn't like to talk about, because it's not a good period of time for it. Anyway, flash forward to that, there is then basically looking at a whole bunch of stuff, and effectively there's then a bunch of kind of counter studies that come to it that find, hey, a lot of the stuff that was done supposedly in this clinical detachment thing was flawed and gave us a wrong view of animals and such things. Books like Never Cry Wolf, for example, detail the studying wolves in their natural habitat opposed to the artificial habitat, which is where the erroneous theory of the alpha dominancy comes from. Wolves don't actually live like that. That's the result of an abusive environment, and basically people then you got people starting to talk and look into it. It's like, oh yeah, a lot of our views of animal behavior and biography are basically informed by Victorian-esque standards of what is appropriate for Western civilization social interaction, and that was basically projected onto them. So then there's the thing, okay, what are animals really like? And we have to take into account that, not to project, like, gender biases on all that blah blah blah. And, of course, that makes things squishier, and there was, of course, the thing where it's like, okay, so we can't anthropomorphize or put animals into too much of a human context, which is fine, but the big dick energy counterpoint to that, if they will, is that a bunch of people basically wanted to use this to effectively butch up, quote-unquote, a softer science, and for a lot of people that means kind of going back to the Victorian thing of rather than just talking, hey, animals aren't just little people, goes to the things that of basically denial of any act of sapience or sentience upon animals. And my favorite example of this were people arguing that, like in actual science things, arguing fish don't feel pain, they just have reactions to adverse stimuli.
What?
Which,
right.
Okay, so you take a fish out of the water and it flops around. These people will argue, no, it looks like it's in pain, but it's not in pain. You're anthropomorphizing it. It's just reacting to adverse stimuli. Which, kind of the counterpoint to that is, yeah, that's what pain is.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what?
Yeah, so... there's...
I mean, if you take the opposite, if you hold somebody down underwater, they're going to feel pain as a result. So, how is the fish not feeling pain being out of the water?
Right, and they're...
Like...
Well, the argument, I guess, is that the fish don't have as sophisticated a nervous system as we do. But
they do.
Yeah, well,
clearly enough to feel pain, because there's the reaction to it, and that's part of thing. Like, it's very complex. There's some people who basically see the hard scientist as it being, like, officially out to kind of kill your darlings and be as effectively anti-romanticism, and then I would say that there's the more appropriate ones there that are saying it's like, well, that's just kind of projecting a kind of just very dick-swinging, hetero-masculine kind of toxic masculinity version of what rationalism is onto your observations.
Right.
And that's tainting them, and it's like look to the comparisons for them. And especially with animal behavior, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Now, in some ways talking that animals perceive pain differently than people do, there is some degree to argue that. For example, there's the thing that, like, a lot of animals, even very smart ones, don't have as much of a concept of, I guess, effectively the emotional now of what feels, like, relevant to be upset about.
Right.
And if you get the idea that if you want to imagine if this is like a period of time, humans tend to have one that goes very far back into the past and very far looking forward into the future. And things at either end of those can affect, like, the emotional response.
Right.
Where a lot of animals have a much shorter one that goes to either the immediate past or immediate future. And once that is over, it's either committed to basically just long-term memory or not worried about. So, an example we were given is that, one, for my practical classes, I had to work at a swine farm. And one of the things that you have to do when new piglets are born is basically the postnatal treatment, which involve shots of iron, clipping their nails and their milk teeth so that they don't actually hurt each other in their scampering or that, and for some of the males on base of it, this is when you do castration. Which we learned how to do. Now, castration is done without anesthetic.
Oh, okay.
But this is, as far as we can tell, the best practice for minimizing pig suffering with the procedure. And this was done via basically studying, doing the whole electrode thing of testing pig reactions when they performed the operation in different ways, and then compared it, into the recovery time, and, measured stress hormones in the blood, and concluded that this was the way that the pigs were least stressed out by it.
Interesting.
And now you may be asking, because actually, it's more stressful for the pigs to be put under and then wake up.
Right, because they don't understand that,
yeah.
I'm guessing?
Now,
why they suddenly fell asleep?
Yeah, now you may be asking, of course, well, why don't we just do a local anesthetic? And it's like, yes, that would be a good thing, if not for the problem that piglets together tend to be kind of dumb, and because they're babies, they don't know anything, but they are born basically with full teeth, and they will, their main way of interacting with the world is largely with their mouths. Mm-hmm. And pigs will eat anything, including each other, and it makes the problem there that if a piglet is, say, numb in that area, other piglets will, see the blood or that area and curiously gnaw on it, making it worse, and will not know to stop unless the other piglet protests.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that they found... so that it was tried doing this with local anesthesia and found that this actually hurt the piglets more just due to pig social interaction. So that's an example too. And, from watching the pigs, they don't actually mind the surgery aspect that much.
Okay.
That's
interesting.
Yeah, no, the stress that they feel from being removed by the sow far outweighs that. And the relief from being returned to the sow seemingly erases any problems that they had with the operation. So that
interesting.
Right. So there's an example too. This is an animal, it has sapience and it has sentience and possibly even sentience as we know it. But its perception of the world is different than what we do with humans. And also, it is being treated as a food livestock, so if it wasn't just for that, we might treat it differently. That's a whole different ethical thing, but that's where I'm getting at it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
No, that's all interesting.
Yeah, I wandered a bit into the woods for that. So,
that's okay.
That's where it's valid to talk about. Okay, but animals do not necessarily have exact emotion or processing as humans do, but especially things like higher vertebrates, and actually shockingly to a lot of other ones, they do have analogous emotional or mental processes.
Right.
It's we see this a lot there, and so basically this, and I'm sorry for using so much technical jargon, but douchebags argument is that dogs benefit from being pets there, so they are just manipulating us and being manipulative for that, and that they are evolutionarily selected to be parasites.
Right.
This is
isn't that actually not the case historically?
Here's the thing. One, he is basically and again, technical term, a fucking pissant, and ignoring what we would actually call this relationship is part of symbiosis. Symbiosis detailing non-predator, non-direct predator-prey reactions across species, and it is specifically mutualism, which means that it is something that both sides to some degree benefit, and thus are adapted to tolerate. Another example of that would be bees and flowers, gut flora, and literally every animal that has a digestive system.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if you were in the Stone Age, which is when dogs were domesticated, you wouldn't just keep dogs or these wolves that were slowly being domesticated around for no reason. They served an obvious function, which was to help with the hunt, for one thing. I think they would help you guard your camp as well. Yes. They'd set up to barking if someone was coming, like a hostile source. They have a bunch of different functions. Obviously, if you're, Inuit people use them as dogs, as, pack animals, dog sleds, and probably some other early people did the same. So they've got all these values.
For example, the Rottweiler breed is actually so bulky because it was bred to drag workloads.
Right.
Oh.
I mean, essentially every breed type has a purpose.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Even if it technically through various types of breeding may have lost its appearance of that purpose.
Well,
pretty much every breed
is also one of the purposes.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Exactly.
There's nothing you can't.
But even for a lot of the companionship ones, a lot of them were still based off of breeds that were often meant to hunt small things. Is really my main point.
Even from the beginning, dogs also had one of the roles of companionship, and part of the thing is that the domestication came because basically wolf social structure and human social structure is effectively close or analogous enough that wolves that have certain traits, basically high in empathy and being able to read body language, social cues, and that things, can successfully integrate into a human society.
Right.
And that humans find dogs pleasant enough company and useful enough to both allow and encourage this. Cats did something similar too. Cats basically proved themselves aesthetically and in some cases practically, but as near as we can tell, the domestication of cats came from entirely that cats started hanging out around humans, and humans found them aesthetically pleasing enough not to drive them away.
Right. Well, I always like the dogs. Dogs are basically the first animal we domesticated, and cats are the last. Temporally, if I'm not mistaken. They're one of the most recent animals to be domesticated. Maybe not the most. I'm pretty sure the most recent animal. But maybe it's not the most recent. But
it's more close. Recent than dogs, and part of the reason.
Yeah.
But so it comes up there that. So it comes like in the actual signs there. No, dogs actually do see their humans as their family. They are the equivalent of the pack there, and they get around there. And yes, there can be tensions because this is a canid and basically a simian-based social structures trying to work together, and dogs aren't as smart as humans, but humans are willing to work with dogs to, help them survive in the world and understand the social cues, blah, 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 blah. No,
Right.
And
there's a reason why dogs are usually service animals.
Yes.
Technically anything can be a service animal, but dogs are used mostly because of that reason, because of their likeliness for empathy.
Yeah.
Right.
Here's the thing. In intelligent tests between dogs and wolves in many instances are seen as far smarter than dogs. They complete the tests much faster, figure out stuff like spatial things a lot easier.
Okay.
Unless the test involves picking up a hint or social cue from a human. Usually in these tests the human just points to what the solution is, or points to a hint at it. In these instances, dogs vastly outperform wolves, because dogs basically mentally are far more basically equipped for cross-species empathy and communication.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and it's not a parasitism thing just because the dog benefits from it. This is kind of absurd. They're like, one of our friends on Twitter said this is like saying, oh, your friends hang out with you just because they like to.
Loser.
Oh god, that's the worst.
Yeah. And again, dogs with no humans actually in cases can survive and go back to that, and there's an actual difference between feral and basically human-oriented dogs.
But the being domesticated, that's still, you're never going to be fully wild, right? Like, you're still... Am I wrong about that, or...?
I mean... part of the thing... basically, it comes down to that the dogs are so naturally wired at this point to, coexist with humans, in that they it's that there is, like, a thing where they won't, like, go back to being wolves, basically.
Right.
There's a degree of difference.
Because they can't.
Right. Yeah, although it's also interesting, in New Jersey, there's a phenomenon known as coy dogs. Which...
Coy
Right.
dogs?
Coy dogs.
Coyotes,
Which we
yeah.
have in, like, the parent...
Oh,
in the
that's
fine
right.
parents or that, and that is basically from feral or abandoned wild dog populations interbreeding with coyotes, and the result are actually, like, a thing that has, like, a hybrid social structure between dogs and coyotes, and is actually more dangerous than either one, because it has
Right.
the hunting instincts of
the
coyotes, and now kind of the broader social intelligence of dogs.
Right. Of the dog.
Yeah.
And I've heard there's also the coy wolves, which are apparently
Right.
really bad because they have the aggression of the wolves, but wolves are afraid of humans, but coyotes aren't. So they keep the bravery, as it were, of the coyotes and the aggressiveness of the wolves. So apparently those guys are really dangerous, the coy wolves.
Yeah, I don't know if it's safe to say that coyotes aren't afraid, but
Well,
coyotes are
less afraid.
used to working with it. Here's the thing. There are large populations of urban coyotes. If you live in a city, you probably have coyotes as neighbors, but
Right.
they are simply so adapted and so stealthy at it, most people are not aware of this. There is indeed a
Right.
population of, like, Chicago and I think Manhattan urban coyotes that they are actually looking and seeing that they are distinctly, like,
Right.
population isolated and distinct enough that they are going into, like, subspecies territory.
Right.
Where they their behavior is distinct enough from other coyotes that it can be
Right.
readily recognizable.
Well, I don't think there are any coyotes where I live in Toronto. I think we're a
Might
little
be.
too far north for coyotes.
Well, yeah.
But, although, yeah, no, I don't think so. But we do have foxes and wolves. I
Yeah.
don't know. We have raccoons, basically, is what we have.
Well, everywhere has raccoons.
I love raccoons.
They're the ones who will inherit the earth more than coyotes. But yes. Yeah, that's actually a good question. Do we?
But
I feel like we
see,
actually maybe
here's
we do
also-
have coyotes. Anyway,
It's possible that you might have coyotes because you are more north, but you're not that too much far north.
Yeah,
So
yeah, maybe we do.
Here's
I
the
don't
thing,
know.
he also talks about, like, stuff that actually disprove this point. Like, 40% of married female dog owners report they receive more emotional support from their pet than their husband or their kids.
yeah,
That means that the dog is actually providing a mutualism
Yes.
there.
The dog is
Uh-huh.
working.
And here's the thing, we actually do know by science that dogs actually do feel comforted or feel upset by their owners in certain things. It actually was really hard to do because basically we had to do, like, brain scans of dogs and it's hard to get them to sit still in the machines.
yeah.
But they
Right.
managed to
I
do
can
it
imagine.
and found that the sight of basically their owners or the humans they recognize as family directly basically lit up the pleasure and delight centers of the dog brain.
Okay.
The same way that it basically does with a toddler when it sees its parent.
Okay.
So this
Yeah, that
isn't
makes
a malicious calculating parasite thing. The dog recognizes this person as family. And,
As a good thing.
right, as a good thing. This is a person I like.
Yeah.
And in the same way humans do with friends and family.
Right.
It's just, it's not. I don't think even he's implying it's a cynical, exploitative act on the part of the dogs, that the dogs are all outsmarting us by getting us to feed them, and it's if anyone's like that, you'd say it's the cats.
Okay,
But-
don't get me. I have to defend cats now.
No,
but one
of
It's
course.
okay.
But the
I'm
one
just-
thing that he says there is that when the dog is overjoyed to have you back, is he happy to have you back or his primary meal ticket? Okay, now you fucking pillock, if you actually knew anything about dog behavior, which is an incredibly complex and deep field of study, When you are training dogs, there is actually an element of, like, personality traits in dogs of training motivation, which means that certain training, basically, incentives don't work with them. And it is legit a thing that some dogs are not food-oriented.
Yep.
Which means that they literally, that if you're asking them to do something they don't want to do, food is not the main motivating factor. Some of them actually are praise motivated.
Yeah.
Which means that that if it comes to, in some instances, if it comes down to getting a treat or getting praise from a person they like, they will more likely pick getting praised by a person.
Or in some cases, they'll prefer a toy over food.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's always something, but it's not always food.
Right.
Is really the main thing.
So it's like,
and yes, dogs actually are oftenly gluttonous. It's one of the reasons we love them. They're stupid and goofy.
Yes. This is quite true.
But it's also not just the gluttonous things, because dogs have emotional needs as well. If it was just them manipulating for food, a dog wouldn't care if its owner is then gone all the day as long as the food is there. However, dogs actually develop, like, depression and anxiety disorders based on how they're treated, and not just abuse, but neglect causes this.
Yeah.
And I think, also, if they're just not stimulated enough, basically.
Here's a good disproof for it. If owner go on vacation, leave dog with family. Dog is thus well fed and cared for entire time owner is gone. Owner comes back, dog fucking is balls off the wall, ecstatic to see this person come back, despite, as this guy would claim, them having a new meal ticket.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
it's.
I mean,
this is why I put it that this is specifically clickbait, and that this is such cherry picking some things to make an argument that this guy knows it's odious and going to offend people, and in some ways we're paying into it because we're talking about it, and it's what the show wants.
Yes.
But
yeah, that's sort of what the show does. Unfortunately, we're in a somewhat gray zone in that we're enhancing all this clickbait. But you're right. I mean, this is really one of the more. And sometimes with articles like this, because I start to read it and I'm like, well, he's talking about some of the really outrageous stuff, like plastic surgery for dogs, and like people who buy magazines about how to keep their dogs happy, and some of the really like, rich people, crazy money things you might do for your dog, which is, fine. And sometimes you get an article like that and, they append a headline to it that's more provocative than what the article was meant to be. And the articles are usually not written by the reporters, right? They're usually written by the editor in an attempt to grab clicks or to grab eyeballs.
Also, they're usually not written by the bitter, horrible old man from an 80s movie who wants to destroy the school playground. Because now
totally not
that
guy.
Stupid kids in there, stupid dog!
Yes.
Give me the chance, I'd run that dog over.
Yeah. I hate dogs and babies and sunlight and love. Even the Grinch
fucking
liked
villains
his dog.
from the Ralph and Bansky Santa Claus is Coming to Town movie.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, even the Grinch had a dog that he liked.
Yeah!
So, even the Grinch would not count in this. But this guy is clearly writing an article, and it's not just the headline, it is the text of the article itself. Because he is definitely trying to get people riled up. Like, 100%. This is, gee, I'm so naughty, people will click on this article and promote it, and it'll be the talk of the town for a day, which it was. People are already forgetting it, of course. But
also, like, as much as this is trying to rile up and offend people, which, good job. That's really, get me upset. That's really fucking hard. I thought about the fact that Wishbone is definitely dead now and got myself upset. Yeah, it's really hard to troll me. Big accomplishment, asshole. Is that this has like a veneer of earnestness that, this is the kind of guy who like sneers that love is just chemicals in the brain.
Right.
You can just get love from chocolate. Nah.
Uh-huh.
And it's like the thing, it's like, yeah, I mean, what you're saying is true. It isn't making the point you think you are, but...
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's you know, when people are... He wants people to read it and get upset. And, like, dogs are probably literally the easiest thing you could go after.
You're literally kicking a dog.
Yeah.
To make people upset.
That is... People... Because even some of the absolute monsters out there still love their dogs and are not gonna, like excuse dogs the way they'll excuse some other, horrible stuff. Like, there's just no way, because how can you? I mean, they're dogs. Like, you can't trying to read a sinister agenda into your dog makes no sense. And that is
like,
kind
congratulations, you wrote an essay that both Hitler and FDR would find morally reprehensible.
Exactly.
In all likelihood, yes.
Possibly Stalin, I don't know. Did he have a dog? Probably, right? I'm sure he had a pet of some kind.
He likely had a pet.
Yeah. Now, I could believe Lenin didn't have a pet, but somehow I think Stalin probably had a pet. Anyway, we'll look that up. But yeah, exactly. Like, the worst people in the world, they have a dog who they love.
I feel Lenin is more of a budgie man.
He'd have a budgergar.
He had a goldfish, and they insisted that the goldfish act on precisely... along.
He had a goldfish and a budgie named
communist...
Hammer and Sickle, respectively.
Oh my god.
Proletariat and bourgeoisie, except then he wouldn't look after bourgeoisie. I'm actually, side note, related to Lenin. You know how I don't know if you've seen, just on a complete tangent here, there's GIFs and clips and stuff you might have seen online, that there was a BBC movie in the 1970s, in which Patrick Stewart played Lenin. Have you seen this?
Whoa!
No, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah, there is.
But no,
there is. It's a mini series. I've seen clips and gifs, and people often put it up. The more Marxist contingent online sometimes put up clips from it. But yeah, it was done in 1975. It's a BBC miniseries. It's about the whole.
Quick question: can we specify tanky rather than Marxist?
No, even the Marxists put it up because they're going, hey, communism or whatever. Yes, the more communist inclined people tend to put it up, and I mean, you think about it for 5 seconds, and that is the most insanely dead-on casting you could possibly imagine is Patrick Stewart playing Lenin, because that is kind of the role he was born to play, more than Professor X or anything like that. He looks exactly like... You give him a goatee and he looks exactly like Lenin. He's got exactly the same sort of bombastic personality where he can command everyone's attention. Anyway, so I've tracked down this miniseries and I'm going to watch it in the next couple weeks, and I will tell you. I'll report back to you what it is. But it's called Fall of Eagles. It's about the whole Russian Revolution and the build up to it, the Romanovs and everything. World War I. So I'm very excited to watch that. I've been hearing about that for years, and I'm like, okay, I gotta watch this. It's Patrick Stewart and an era of history that I've been reading more and more about lately. So I'm very excited to to see that. And I'll let everyone know if it's worth watching, but I can't imagine it's not worth watching just to see Patrick Stewart play Lenin. I mean, that alone, even if the rest of it is garbage, I can't imagine that it's not worth watching for that. So I will report back.
Also,
I mean, I just Googled it, and it does look quite good, so...
Yes. No, I'm sure it's great. It's a BBC historical miniseries. I'm sure it's really good.
Yeah. It's 13-part, so shouldn't take you too long to steam through it.
Well, that's pretty epic by BBC standards.
13 parts, which means it's one of the longest-running BBC series in history.
Exactly. Tonight we're showing all 6 episodes. Except whenever they say that, it's always the community joke about Doctor Who, which of course has been on for 55 years. So, yeah. Anyway.
The only difference is that their episode lengths are different, so that's the only thing.
Yeah.
But
okay. Also, for the longest time, BBC sitcoms and stuff legit would just have be a standard 20-minute show, but there would be only 6 shows a season.
Right. And was it 20? Like, they didn't have ads on the BBC, right?
No,
they didn't until one point. Right. Where they then allowed ads in, but the ads are still really limited, and I think limited to a commercial break in the middle, and then commercial breaks in between shows.
Right, yes.
So, it's like, unless stuff has changed, that was my experience when I visited London, that the commercials are noticeably less intrusive.
Right, yeah.
At least on the BBC, if it's like Sky Plus or any other channel, that they tend to have more commercials because they need the funding of commercials.
Yeah, because BBC is public television and Sky is a private broadcaster and all the other stuff.
Correct.
And I'm trying I'm actively trying not to break it into another discussion with Avi about Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared.
I know, I was like, oh, don't bring it up, because it's about this.
Right, I've got to watch that. That's right, you told me to watch it last time, and I didn't, so now I have to try it.
Yeah, you'll like it, it's weird enough.
No.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, there you go. The BBC, hallmark of... Well, I have a friend who, like an online pal who is British, and he writes about TV, and he really likes Andrew Hickey. He's a good writer. He's got a website. I'll put up a link or whatever. But he's a huge Doctor Who fan, and he wrote about all the sort of weird, quirky TV shows, and he talks about this huge decline in quality in British TV sometime around, I think, the late 80s. He said there was some act that came in, which I guess is the equivalent of how in the US, they made it that cartoons could be big toy ads, whereas they couldn't before. Suddenly you were allowed to, do all this very commercialized stuff in TV, which they'd resisted a bit up till then. So apparently there's one that's sort of the equivalent of that in the late 80s in Britain. And he feels that TV after that point kind of declined sharply. That there was more.
Yeah.
And he actually makes an interesting point. It specifically
was the act that I believe put commercials in television, because prior to that, I believe it was just entirely publicly funded.
Yeah, basically.
Right, in Britain, yeah. It could be. I don't know enough about the ins and outs of it, but that sounds right. I know that BBC does have ads now, and didn't before. We had up up here, we had as well as we got PBS and we got the CBC, which is Canadian TV, but that has ads. And then there was TVO, which is the provincial public television, as well as the federal, which is the CBC. And the federal had normal ads, but the provincial didn't. It had it had ads, but they were like bumpers for other shows, basically. There was no commercial breaks in the middle of the show. I have not watched TV. I think it's still the same way. I don't think we ever fell back onto actual ads. The only difference is that corporations could sponsor a show so that they could get ads on that way. Like, it was funded by a grant from the blah 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 corporation. So that they'd get that kind of advertising. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, you wouldn't get ads on TV Ontario. Anyway, it's my childhood TVO, but I have a fondness for TV Ontario.
So since I just gave a big lecture about how do dogs work, let me just do my 30-second defense of cats. Cats are emotional creatures. They do like the humans, but the cat's social structure is different than dogs and humans, and cats have their own body language and ways of expressing affection, which if people are not aware of it or used to it, comes off as them being cold or uncaring.
Right.
Of course, it's just their their own less human social.
Cats actually have a really interesting social structure where a colony of cats will have like a bunch of cats staking out around the same territory, but they will overlap with each other at certain places and be divided chronologically, so that cats will actually tether, like two cats can have the same territory or overlapping significantly enough, but they will stagger their sleep schedules so that they don't run into each other when they're patrolling.
Okay.
Are you talking about that documentary they did on cats where they put cameras on cats to find out where they go?
Oh, I didn't see
and
that.
Then they discovered.
I didn't think that one, but there's. But
there's
I'm
that
sure...
one. Because that one, they also discovered that cats would sneak into each other's houses and eat each other's foods.
Yeah.
Because that meant that they were getting better nutrition that way.
Yeah, that would show that. Okay, so cat nutrition. The cat diet and nutritional thing is really genuinely weird. And cats have... so cats have the reputation as picky eaters, because the cats have kind of a really weird internal sort of diet thing. They need specifically different proteins that they cannot make themselves, which is why a cat cannot live off of dog food, and also, since it's so rich, why dogs, like, fucking crave cat food like it's crack.
Okay.
But cats seemingly have a thing that is predictive appetite, where... So, a lot of the things with animal cravings are basically, I am low in this enzyme, this protein, ergo, I crave things that are rich in that. Cats have a thing where they're basically, I am not yet low in this, but based on how the diet has been, I think that my stomach predicts that it might be in the future. So my sense of taste and what flavors I like are going to suddenly change to try to pre-compensate for that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and this...
That's also really weird, but that's still interesting.
What happens if they get
So
wrong?
this is also... This is the phenomena that people have, like, with their cat. Like, this was fine for you yesterday, why are you snubbing it? And that is it. That literally their tastes change based on what their body predicts
what their body needs
will come up in the diet. It's really weird.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But, okay, so the head of a cat... So, like, the structure of the cat colony, you have, like, cats are kind of individualists, but they actually like being close enough to each other as long as they're not bumping up too much so that they can check in with each other. Especially female cats that basically will, like, arrange themselves to have an area overlapping with most of them to basically be a common ground.
Okay.
And it is at about that area where, that, like, when a cat is pregnant, it will go to there to deliver labor, because the other female cats will watch over it and effectively midwife it.
I wonder if that's what's happening in my backyard. I hope not.
Yeah.
No, there's a cat who every year has a litter of kittens, and I don't know what happens to them because I can never catch them. That's what's happening.
Yeah. Okay. So that's
my backyard is cat Switzerland.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of like the local wild cat populations.
Oh God, that's so weird because it's a black cat.
Yeah. And this is also why at the things with a lot of indoor cats, why there can be trouble introducing a new cat there. It's not that cats don't like other cats, but it's like, well, is there enough territory for us to divvy up? The cat, like the older house cat may be basically of the thing, I have already claimed all of this house as my territory. If we can't work out a time thing, I'm not willing to share. Or it may come up that a cat... But then again, some cats are like, a new friend. I am indeed willing to share my territory. And then often there will be places there, except this. You touch this and you die. This is my special spot. You find your own.
Yeah, I when I was young, we got one cat, and then another one showed up, and we took him in, and they did not get along, but they based on what you're saying, I think it was that. It was like they had to have their own territory. They never wanted to. They always wanted to be, awake at different times, or they'd stake out. One would stake out the living room. One was always downstairs. One was more an indoor cat. One was more an outdoor cat. So that does fit. I do remember the one time they were both sitting in the living room on a chair, and they were both like on the back of a chair, each facing in different directions. And that was the closest they ever got to like getting along. Basically,
but that's okay. That is actually a sign of cat affection.
Yeah.
Because really,
if a cat is secure enough with someone in its territory not to look at them, that's a sign of trust. Like, cats greeting each other will... Like, cats that are like... And you'll see cats do this with humans. They will make eye contact with someone and then basically blink and look away. And that is, like, very blatantly signaling, I see you, but I trust you enough that I feel comfortable looking away.
Okay.
Interestingly, people who are allergic to cats, when they make eye contact with one, often quickly look away from it reflexively, which the cat interprets as a friendly gesture, which is why cats tend to be friendly to people who are allergic to them.
Oh no! Oh no!
Great.
Yeah, the actual thing of, like, slow blink and look away is how you say hello to a cat there. And it's really interesting. Once you know it and try it, you can see that, like, cats will respond that way, and it does put them at ease. It's very fun.
Huh.
Interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
I need to get a cat.
Knowing cat language.
I need to meet a new cat and attempt this.
But yeah,
there's lots of cats in my neighborhood.
The thing that, like, cats, like, don't like humans, and that their meowing is just, imitating human infant noise so they can manipulate people. It's like, okay, cats literally have a vocalization for happiness and contentment that is involuntary, that they will do in the presence of humans they like. Purring is literally involuntary happy noise.
Yes.
Cats cannot
so they're not
fake
that
purring.
Manipulative.
And also, it's an inherently social thing because cats will not purr when alone.
Right.
It's an active, social signal thing, and it actually, like, the behavior it's derived from is that when kittens are born, they're blind and deaf, but they can feel the vibrations of the mother cat purring, and use that to orient themselves to where she is. And then, in turn, they can purr to let her know where they are. So it's like, purring is literally the cat like, I am feeling as secure as I did when I was a newborn baby with my mother.
Oh my god.
So yeah, sorry. That was my overly long defense of cat. But that ties into what I was saying. It's like, yes, it's not just being a human in a little furry suit. They have basically their own body language, their whole way of communicating. But there are indeed emotional preferences, emotional attachments, pair bonding they express. And indeed can and will express that with the humans.
The humans.
Yes, the humans.
And not to mention, that's not even getting into, like, separate personalities any given dog or cat may have as a result, which then makes it even more complex than whatever anybody thinks.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, there are entire TV shows based around this because, I mean, I remember reading... No, I remember reading people were really upset about the name of the show My Cat from Hell, saying cats aren't hellish, and it's like, if you watch the show, these people are pretty much in that state, because half of them, they had one cat, and that one cat was a perfect cat, it was loving and charming and all of that stuff, and then that cat obviously passes away, some time passes, and then they get a new cat, and they think the new cat's going to be just like the old cat, but the new cat is the new cat, and therefore has a different personality and different signals, and they have to learn all of those things. So, yeah.
Oh, like...
And the same thing happens with dogs.
Yeah. My current cat, Baxter, actually, he is not big on cuddling too much. he vastly prefers to show affection to people via playing with them. And that's just how he is, but he's still very affectionate and actually very sociable. He just has kind of a lower tolerance to where he's overstimulated by actually being cuddled and pet, and then he wants his own space.
Right, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah. Meanwhile, our neighbor's cat, Neo, that we babysit all the time, is an absolute cuddle slut and wants to be basically draped around somebody's shoulders like a majestic shawl at every opportunity.
What kind of cat is he?
It's an American long hair.
Oh my god.
He looks kind of like just a bigger version of Baxter with fluffier hair.
Oh my god.
Yeah, the long-haired. I'm mildly allergic, so that would not be great for me. But I do like the big puffy long-haired cats.
I will definitely have I have reactions to long-haired cats.
Yep.
I'm usually okay with short-haired cats, but long-haired cats.
I'm usually fine with cats in there, but poor Neo has just so much fur that even I feel sneezy around him.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, because I have a friend who has a Maine Coon, and I had such a bad reaction the last time I stayed at her place that I kind of swiped some medicine from their cabinet because I was like, I can't deal with this. I need something. So I went snooping when I really shouldn't have, but I was okay.
Well, now
I was okay.
Now you've confessed it on a podcast, so...
Yes, now I've confessed it on a podcast. This was a couple of years ago. She doesn't even live in that house anymore. So it's fine.
Listening. She's out there. She's getting in a car right now.
I have to tell you something. I'm a cop, and this entire podcast has been a sting operation.
Oh, has it now?
We got her, Ing, finally!
We got her! Move!
It took 10 episodes.
SWAT! You have the shot!
Oh no, I took some allergy medicine from somebody.
Yeah.
Dear Lord. Probably the worst part about that night is I'm having reactions to her cat, and I find the allergy medicine and I take it, and then I go back to go to sleep, and then the cat is right there next to where I sleep.
Yep.
He's like, hello.
Yes.
Hello, friend. I'm going to sit here.
I had to house sit for some friends once, and I wasn't house sitting, I was staying at their house, but I had an air mattress on the floor that I was sleeping on, and they had a cat running across me all night, basically.
Oh.
So it was a little hard to sleep with a cat running up and down my back all night, which normally I would be fine with. Well, I wouldn't be fine with them running up and down, but if you just pick a spot and lie there, it would have been great.
Oh, God,
but they're nocturnal, of course.
That's also one of Baxter's favorite ways to be affectionate with people, is that he will go out of his way to jump on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they like to dogs. I know that's how they can. They prefer to jump up on people and put their paws on people to like. I saw an article about that the other day where they don't like being hugged very much. Like we like to hug the dogs.
That article was a bit misleading. There are ways of hugging that dogs actually don't like, or do not naturally like. Some dogs will like it because they, again, just personality that they get that this is human saying he loves me and I like that. But in general, it's like dogs being restrained and from above, that is uncomfortable for them. However, being like sort of like a one-hand hug to the side so that they can lean up and press against you, dogs like that.
Okay.
And again, it's in general.
Not the full embrace, but like a half one.
Yes.
Yeah.
It depends on the dog's personality.
And it also is the thing of towering over them.
Right.
Is discomfort
thing. So you get on their level with a half
or
hug.
they like to jump up onto your level, basically.
Yeah, or you know, let the because some dogs very much do hug. Like it's actually one of the behaviors that is identifiable and synonymous with the boxer breed. So just let the dog initiate it. Like you've seen Gobi will do that. He will actually get up and hug people with his forepaws.
Aww.
He's a boxer, is he?
No, he's a Shih Tzu. I realize that's confusing.
Yeah, he's not a boxer. He's not a
leading
boxer.
us about your dog, who someday we will have on the podcast. Well, we've already kind of had him on the podcast.
Yeah, he's been on
Yeah.
the damn podcast.
Yes. He makes a guest appearance every so often. We usually cut it out, but
Yeah,
just trust us.
Aw.
Anyway, we should probably wrap it up. I think we're getting
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm
time.
sorry I monopolized so much of it talking
No.
about Hamiltons, but
It was very interesting. It was
People like animals,
People like-
so it's fine.
people like animals, unlike
Well,
what certain
some
clickbait
people.
journalists would have you believe. And
Indeed.
they, it was interesting. You actually know what you're talking about. So it was a welcome change of pace from my thing. So anyway, so on that note, we're heading out. So have a good night, everyone. Keep your big dick energy pumped up as high as possible. Pat a dog if you see one, and remember, don't go chasing waterfalls, or by waterfalls I mean clickbait. Have a good night, and we'll see you all in the funny pages. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.